and I thought, oh, this is very interesting.
Yeah.
and I thought, that would save me a lot of headache. I don't have to figure out what to do, what to write. I'll just tell it to write for me. So I thought I'll come and have a look.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, writing things is great with this tool. In fact, I was just testing it just now. Again.
Well, I think it's great. Well, I was just telling Greg, it says, Greg wants to be, I told you he wants to be a copywriter. I said, copywriters are going to be obsolete now because of this. I
You're
said,
so cruel.
But it's true. Why would you need to hire a copywriter when you can tell ChatGPT to do it, Because, and I'm thinking from my business, I could just say, write me something, a blurb, and just copy and paste. But I was kind of caught something briefly on there, and I don't remember, it was a short video, where I understood, the topic of plagiarism, It's so easy to write a whole book now, and I think, right, how's that gonna work, for someone, especially also for uni, uni homework and all, it's so easy for someone to just tell it to do their homework for them, So once I was thinking, let's come in and have a look and see what you have to share. It'd be, I mean, not that it bothers me, because we're no longer in that category of society, but it will still be interesting to hear what else you could do and how it's going to open up a lot of things, really.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it? Yeah.
Very much so. Shall we start the recording?
Already started.
The recording already on.
Oh, we have started. Okay, wonderful. All right, let's get straight into it. Welcome everyone. Jayan, welcome Jayan. Hi Tim.
Yeah, nice to be here on your show. Well, always a pleasure.
Thank you. It's not a show, right? But it's just going to be more my personal sharing. Okay,
it's always good.
Yeah, when Vic actually mentioned this tool in our group chat, it got some of us intrigued, right? As you probably know, that we spend a lot of time creating content, what I call creative content, as well as some of it not repetitive content, like step by step, for our hands-on lab and stuff like that. In fact, I was testing many of those areas. I was showing Cole earlier. Okay, so thank you so much for joining. All right, so this is going to be a session over multiple sessions. Okay, I don't think it's fair to be able to cram everything into a single hour, because I want to try and do as much demos as possible to show you from a few days of playing with this tool what is possible. Right, I'm hoping that this tool can make me redundant. All right, and that was the whole idea, trying to see whether it's possible to push the tool so hard that it can do the work that we are doing. Okay, so my name's Noel. All right, those of you who are new to the sharing that we do, 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. is generally what we call our TTT sessions, train the trainer sessions. I know many of you may not be trainers and may not be planning to be trainers, but it's okay. It's just a name that we use to say that it's a community building sessions, right? So we do this out of our own willingness from our heart to want to share. Okay, so from the days I would say that I've used ChatGPT, I've been very impressed. But I've also found weaknesses within the tool. So I would like to also share that part of it to give you a balanced view of what the tool is capable of doing and not capable of doing. Okay, so those of you who have not seen me before, okay, welcome. Now, I'm a person who is very keen to look at things from the perspective of the 5W1H, right? The what, the why, the who, the when, and so forth, and how. right? With that framework, I found that it is very possible to build up something very quickly. So this slide deck that you're seeing took me about an hour to put together, right? Just based on that framework. So if any of you have to write anything creative and you're short of how to get started, I highly recommend you to look at 5W and 1H. Okay, in fact, I tested ChatGPT very early on with the 5W and 1H. Okay, so this is a bit of my profile, and Vic is in the picture there, the guy who introduced ChatGPT to us. And of course, I believe a lot of this AI capability is made possible because of data. Okay, and it's not surprising that many years ago, the economists already believed that the world's most valuable resource is data and no longer oil, right? And today, many of us live off data, right? So in this session, what I wanted to do was to frame the situation of what if you are a newbie, someone who is new to a topic, to an area of interest and so forth, and you're trying to go as deep as you can without getting snagged or getting trapped into plagiarism. That means copying people's work outright, right, and claiming that it is your own unique work, right? So I want to teach you how to do it correctly so that you don't get yourself trapped in that. But I want you to start by thinking about what is happening in the world of AI from the perspective of ChatGPT, right? And we also look at who can benefit from that, right? And I believe that all of us in this session and beyond will be able to make use of it, even our kids, for example. And I think it's important for us who have families to be aware of such tools because the tool can be misused, especially for the younger people. So if they don't use the tool correctly, it may come a point in time that they will be totally dependent on the tool and they themselves will be kind of like an empty shell. And that will be a very sad day if people go down that path. So I want this session to help you get started to prevent that kind of situation from happening. And I believe that using this tool is going to be fun and useful, okay? And how to get started in the best way possible. Okay? It's without getting snagged by malware and all those other things. So the first area that I want to go into is what is ChatGPT, if you want. And if any of you have questions, I always believe that there is no such thing as a stupid question. So I urge you to drop it into the chat window. All right. Or if you want, towards the end, I will leave some time for you to unmute and you can speak out and ask a question and we can have this interactive session. Okay. I don't mind people asking questions during the session, but if I have to kind of divert the flow, I'm concerned that I might not be able to finish. Okay, as usual, many of us who do sessions like this, we tend to be overzealous in putting together the right content. Now, before I even go into who can benefit, what is ChatGPT? All right, I want to go straight into my first demo. Okay, I'm going to let ChatGPT tell you about itself. Okay, that was one of the tests that I did for ChatGPT. Okay, I didn't want just a definition coming from Google, just in case Google has an intent to bring down something like ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT to tell me about itself. Okay, so this was one of the tests that I did. Okay, so on the left side, after you log into the ChatGPT website, which looks like this. Okay, so for all intent and purpose, right, you have to realize that this tool is still in its early days. So it does not have a mobile app. So if you go to the Apple Store or you go to the Google Play Store and you find all these ChatGPT apps, they are not from OpenAI. Okay, so that's the one of very important thing you need to understand. So you can only get to ChatGPT through the browser. Okay, so that's why I'm using the browser. I'm not using a mobile app, right? Because when Vic shared this, one of the first things I did was I went to the Apple Store and I looked through all the apps. I could not find something that looked genuinely coming from OpenAI. So I did not install anything. And then upon some searching, I discovered there's actually no mobile app available yet. as of about a week ago when I first started. So you click on this to try it. You create an account or you use one of your other accounts, all right, to log in. Okay, once you log in, you get an interface that looks like this. Okay, in fact, you get nothing here because I've been busy trying different things. All right, you just click new chat and then you type. Okay, so to make sure that my demos are prompt, I actually did some of the work earlier. Now, why I did that also is because I discovered some questions, ChatGPT took quite a bit of time to respond. Okay, just like you tell a person, hey, tell me more about yourself. And then that person is like pondering for a few seconds, that a few seconds go to a few minutes, and then finally they reveal to you what they thought. Okay, so I went ahead and I did this. So what is ChatGPT? It's an AI-powered language model. So I thought I would try to provoke it, ask the same question again. I want to see whether this AI will get upset with me and say, why are you asking me twice? Right? I was hoping that it will have that kind of human, behavior, right? But it knows very well, all right, that it is actually a machine, all right? It is actually been designed, as it says, with ability to use deep learning algorithms and so forth. So this is what it is. So I even provoke it further, and with Cole and I was testing this out, and we say, who are you? So me asking ChatGPT, who are you? So it came back again saying insistently, I'm an AI language model. All right. And we thought we would trick it, right? And we'll type in something like this. Who am I? Now, those of you who are technical in this call, you know that who am I actually means something in a different context, right? So if you type this in a command line, what do you get? Who am I is part of the TCP/IP protocol. It will come back and says the machine name, right? But as you can see, ChatGPT is very context sensitive, right? Context sensitive in the sense that it knows that it is talking about what is ChatGPT, right? Who are you is also referencing itself, right? So even as I push forward and I say, who am I with all the right spaces, it continue to insist on the same information, okay? Now, who am I in this context is actually asking ChatGPT about myself, Noel. So it came back and says, I don't have access to personal information about you. That's very smart, isn't it? If you think about it, if you talk to a total stranger on the road, all right, and you ask the stranger, who am I? What do you expect the stranger to say? Probably something like this, right? Maybe it won't say that I'm an AI language model, but it will probably say, I don't know you. So, asking that question is probably something that is not going to yield any kind of productive result, okay? So this tool is very good at being context sensitive, and that's something that I'm very impressed with, all right? Because if you try to do this in Google, and many of us probably have done it, every search phrase is not related to the previous or the one before that. In fact, it's very smart. It knows the entire thread of the conversation. So the chat here literally means a conversation in that context, okay? So that's ChatGPT. Now, earlier I talked about the 5W1H, right? So this is exactly what I did. So I typed in 5W1H, okay? Now, it came back and says, I don't know what you're talking about. All right, just to give you a context, because some people feel that this is going to be a Google replacement. Well, maybe at this point it's not, but is it possible that it could be a Google replacement? So let's see. All right, so let me do a 5W1H here, okay? Now you notice, even as I finish typing it, it's really got a lot of abbreviations or a lot of similar searches done in the past. It immediately came back with a whole lot of different search results, right? Project management, defined and applied, and so forth, methodology, and so on. So from here, you can see immediately if I type 5W1H, ChatGPT didn't have enough context on how to respond correctly, but Google obviously did. And probably it's because of all the thousands of previous searches that's been done, even in the course of the last couple of months, maybe. Right? So it's definitely not a replacement of Google search at this point in time. But as mentioned, what I really like about it from a tool perspective is when I did provide the context. So I decided to spell out what is 5W1H. And the answer was staggering. Okay. This is really, really useful information. The 5W and 1H are questions that are used to gather information about a particular topic. So if I'm totally new about ChatGPT, I can ask the question in this context, all right? But I didn't. So what I did was I said 5W and 1H for continuous improvement, right? And then it came back with all of these. Now, if I'm new, totally new to this concept of continuous improvement, and I ask this fairly appropriate question, 5W1H for continuous improvement, it actually came back with very good suggestions on how I can do that, from the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how. This is a powerful way to help someone learn, right? Now, it's good for people like us who probably have learned for many years in school and beyond school, into college, even beyond college, into our workplace and so forth. So how about people who are really, really young? If they are in kindy or in their primary school, would something like this be useful? Any, I'm asking this to you more from the perspective of what are your thoughts? Anyone? Don't be shy. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think it's good because that's another option of teaching the child the
Yep.
tools to facilitate their own learning. So it's taking ownership by learning how to ask questions, by learning how to ask the correct question.
Yeah.
Right? It could be at some point it will overtake and become Google, right? Where it becomes an infinite library. So you're talking about a massive, massive infinity encyclopedia. So for a young child, and I agree with you when it comes to a point when a child becomes so dependent that they are relying on it and they lack their own organic searching, right? For things, it's just that, oh well, do my homework, can you write me up, an essay, right? Yes, if it's not carefully monitored, then all the child is doing is handing in good essays that get super grades, but actually have no clue what he or she is writing.
Yes.
So I think it's that there will always be weakness there as a human.
Yep.
As a human is growing, if you're not an active participant in, well, ChatGPT could come back with a very good essay, but if the child were to read the essay, and understand what it came back, that is still a participation, an organic participation of learning there.
Yeah.
It's shortcut. It's like how we used to learn with abacus and all, and then suddenly you have calculator, but you still need to know how to work the calculator. A shortcut it, but you still need to learn. I think it's very much like when I first started with Greg, homeschooling him. It's like there are things that you need to spend time going through the process, and there are things you don't really need it. You just shortcut it and get to the end, so that you could get on to do other things that's more important, if that makes sense.
Yes. You're right, Sharon.
That's my
correct. Thank you for your sharing.
But
so
my question, my question is, how true is true what they come back with?
very good question. Very good
how
question, because that's something that I try to push it very hard to validate. Right. So one of the areas of interest in my community is this area called HCI. All right. Obviously, in the context of the internet, HCI is not just limited to the area that we're interested in. And the abbreviation of HCI in our context is this thing called hyperconverged infrastructure. But from ChatGPT, the first choice was definitely not hyperconverged infrastructure. As you can see, when I said 5W and 1H for HCI, it came back immediately with human-computer interaction. Now, this like default response was also true when I first started to use HCI in Google. So when I searched HCI in Google, Google also gave me back the same thing as human-computer interaction. So obviously there is a rich set of search results out there stored in indexes and all that, saying that HCI by default is human-computer interaction. And if you be more specific, like what I did, HCI equals hyperconverged infrastructure, then I can then start to twist or move the conversation in that direction. All right. So now if I say 5W1H for hyperconverged infrastructure, I start to get very intelligent kind of responses. So you like this, JN? Cool.
Yeah, so I've been playing with while you're actually doing these demos, right? So it appears that it seems to be learning pretty fast. So which is very encouraging, right? So that's exactly, I know it may not have the database and the libraries that Google has today, but yeah, thanks to the years of repository of data that Google people have been using Google for. But I think it's just a matter of time. But I like the way it is trying to learn. So that's very encouraging.
Yeah, spot on, Jane. But I think we have a role to play to encourage the learning, just like Sharon was sharing, right? See, like when I say explain Azure ACI, right, then it started to give me quite relevant information, except that it is a bit outdated. You look at the names like Azure Security Center, for example. All right, Microsoft don't use Azure Security Center as the name for that solution anymore. All right, we know it as Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Okay, so obviously the database that is using, like what the OpenAI admitted, this is still going back to, if I'm not wrong, 2021. Right, they need to update it to 2022 and keeping up abreast with all the current searches and so forth, so that when we do a search, it's not just going back to some recent past, but it should be almost live, if you want, from that perspective. So if you are someone who's totally new in that particular topic, you have no background, you actually have to validate this information that's returning to you against multiple sources. Okay. Now, Jayan,
yeah, so I was just going through a few things, right? See, its ability to contextualize certain things is pretty encouraging. So, the next subsequent question that I asked was different HCI technology available in the market. So it did think about it for a while, but it did come up with quite encouraging answers, although I would have loved to see Microsoft Azure Stack HCI there, but it did list Nutanix, VMware, and Dell. So yeah, that's the third option, which I'm happy about. So, awesome. But yeah, it's pretty good.
Awesome. Now, some of the things that we do obviously is not just technology related. So one of my, you can say, people that I look up to, like a mentor, all right, is a person called Simon Sinek. All right, so he wrote a book called Start With Why. Okay, so when I typed in Start With Why, immediately it pulled out that, right? That shows that there's actually quite a lot of people who have searched in the past, right? And there's enough information in the internet for it to write about what Simon Sinek talked about. Okay, so really it is dependent on data that it is in existence, but the element of being able to contextualize that is very powerful, right? And that's something that we don't see that with Google, but we can definitely depend on that. Now, this continuous improvement, right, is also found in what they call a data-driven methodology with something called Six Sigma. So I wanted to probe it to see whether it can tell me more about Six Sigma, for example. Okay, for the context of project management and all that, often we learn those things to help us, right, so that we can continuously drive better quality projects and so forth. Now, from our context of our technology, I decided to give it the ultimate test, acid test if you want. How do I deploy Azure Stack HCI? Obviously it's not perfect, all right, but it's done a pretty decent job. Okay, if you go through it, it's high level enough. You can say that there are a lot more details you can fill in, which is fair, all right, but this will be a very good starting point, right? The bit that I really like is when you tell it, how about with a specific brand? Okay, I'm just testing this because I was doing some work for HP, right? So with HP Gen 11, for example, and so on, okay? But it didn't give me enough details to differentiate it from the generic deployment. So obviously the tool still has a lot more work, okay? Or maybe there isn't enough information of the latest generation, for example. So that's just a line of probing and searching, okay? Now let me give you another perspective of what you can do with this, all right? It's like, say for example, we are still in the last few days of Chinese New Year. Okay, so I wanted ChatGPT to tell me a little bit of Chinese New Year. So I started to ask, and interestingly enough, it knows that it's a 15-day festival, all right, the celebration, right, and it's celebrating the Spring Festival, right, and the Lunar New Year. Okay, so it has pretty much decent information. So if you are totally new to Chinese New Year and you did a search, all right, you can actually find quite informative, high-level details to start with, and you can keep probing it and probing it and probing it. Okay, so if I wanted to go down the path of this, I could say, which part of the world celebrates Chinese New Year? Right, then it should pull out all those relevant. So if I'm doing a project on Chinese New Year, that line of thinking and asking the right questions will be highly relevant. But I wanted ChatGPT to tell me about itself, which is what you saw earlier, right? So that's where we started to play with things like even the IP address, okay? Because we wanted to put in things like IP config and all that. So something more technical and so on. So you can use it for technical disciplines. You can use it for non-technical disciplines. You can ask it silly questions if you want, how about iPhone and all that. But this, how about iPhone, by the way, is from the context of check my IP address. Okay, so just to give you a bit, how do I check my IP address? How about Mac? If I'm new to a Mac operating system, how do I check my IP address? How do I check my IP address on my iPhone, which I have no clue. I use an iPhone, but I have no clue how to check my IP address. So this is extremely relevant and very good in terms of understanding the context of the earlier questions that I asked. All right, and those of you who are Android phones, right, it also gives you something. But obviously, I love that if someone can validate how accurate this is. Okay, any questions? Any comments? So far, is it useful? What you have seen? Ah, localized. Oh, well, let's try. Let's see. Okay. What do you think, Chris? It says that it's believed to have originated in Malaysia. Not bad, yeah?
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad. And
Was
not only
it
that,
really a Malaysian dish?
Malaysia boleh. Okay. Now, the other thing that is very interesting, I'm not sure whether you
Is
noticed,
it really
yeah?
a Malaysian dish?
Yeah, supposedly.
You try to
Supposedly.
put some Chinese word. I got 2 words inside the chat window.
Oh, you do? Okay, let's try. Let's try. Oh, I see. That's for me to copy and paste inside, yeah? Okay,
Yes,
very
yes.
good. Let's try.
Now you can try the nasi lemak.
Nasi lemak, yeah, okay. You want me to put it into this particular chat or a new chat?
Yeah, never mind. You just put inside here and see what does it come up.
No, it's better to start a new chat.
Yeah?
Hey.
Wow.
Oh. All right.
Well, I don't know what the Chinese words mean. Is it correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Firecracker, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So maybe I can say, what do you do during Chinese New Year? Okay, so let's see what it says. Does it play with fireworks? You know, what do you do during Chinese New Year? Will it tell me about fireworks? What do you think? Amazing.
Well, I put the Chinese characters in my ChatGPT and I got a network error. I'm sure it's our government would have blocked it. Just kidding.
Try again, Jay. And my
That-
finding is try
that's
and
good.
try until it gets it.
No, just kidding.
Maybe reframe the question.
Not bad. Look at this. Now, let me show you something.
Yeah.
Tell me more. I'm not happy enough. My goodness, if you're bored, this can keep you going for hours.
I know. That's what I was thinking. You'll never go to sleep.
Now, the next thing we need is for the ChatGPT to read back to us. Don't give me text. Give me words, I can hear it, all right? Rather than just having to look at it, right?
Does
I'm
it
sure-
provide you an option to show a picture? Not yet, right?
No, it can't. I tried that already. It's in my list of things that I tested. So what I did was I actually said, where is it? Yeah, show me a picture, something like that. And then it says I cannot do pictures because I'm only a chat bot. All right. Yeah, I think it's here somewhere. Yeah, I've done that part. It doesn't do it. Okay. Now I asked it to show me a movie as well. Right? But it says no. When I ask for a picture, it says go to Google Images. When I say go to show me a movie, it says go to Netflix. So it knows what it's capable of doing and what is not. Okay, now that said, right? That's what ChatGPT is from that perspective. Okay, there are other things that I think we need to understand about ChatGPT. Okay, ChatGPT should not be just about what it is, right? But it's really who can benefit, all right? And I believe this is truly something that all of us can benefit. You, me, everyone can benefit. Okay. Now, just like what Sharon says, I think there's some guidance that we need to provide, especially for the younger folks, right? For the older people, even working people, sometimes if they are new in the workforce, they are new in the job, the seniors, the older people need to provide guidance. Now, if they don't, all right, I'll show you the consequences as well, okay? Because I'm cognizant of plagiarism, I'm cognizant of copy and pasting, lock, stock, and barrel, and basically losing the whole ability to think and do things by yourself. So I believe there are ways we can provide check and balances. I want to show you some of that as well. Now, that said, Microsoft has been showing a lot of interest. So recently they have decided to invest like 10 billion US dollars into this organization. Okay, now obviously there are reasons for it, right? Microsoft sees great potential with this technology, right? And if you read through the blogs and so forth, they are planning to incorporate it into every technology Microsoft has to offer. And they have really started that. Interestingly enough, they didn't have to wait very long, right? They have just released something called Azure Open AI Service. Okay. And with that, you can see that in the short spate of about 3 years from, sorry, not 3 years, 7 years from September 2016, when they started to look at AI, all the way to 2023, which is approximately 7 years or 6+ years, if you want, Microsoft has, Microsoft has started to embark on this journey to incorporate AI in a deep manner, all right, with a lot of technologies across the board. Okay, so this is an interesting element of the corporate world engaging AI actively, but not limited to that. We also see a dark side of who is engaging AI. Okay, we're seeing cyber criminals also going down that path. Now, why this is an important balance to our understanding is because we believe, or at least I believe, that technology, just like any tool, can be used for good and it can be used for bad. So if we choose not to learn anything about it, and the bad is learning all about it, we could easily be overwhelmed by the bad. Even if some people believe that AI can replace people, which I don't think will, at least not in the short foreseeable future, but the bad people like the cyber criminals will overwhelm us. So we need to take the proactive move to learn more about ChatGPT and even other AI engines that come along, not limited to ChatGPT. Okay, so these are some of the things that I'm starting to see, because I do dabble a bit with cybersecurity, and I'm getting progressively uncomfortable with how the hackers are taking advantage of AI engines and tools to generate everything, right? From phishing emails to whatever that they can do, even writing code, all right, creating malware, as some of these articles are inferring and describing. So it's a very serious problem, if you want, of how the dark world, the dark web, if you want, is taking tools like this to their advantage. So it's very important for us to take this technology by the bull, by the horn rather, and steer it, right, and make the most out of it. Okay. Now, I believe for anything, we should always have an opportunity to insert fun. Okay, so how I insert fun is I try something in Google and I try something in ChatGPT. I try something in Bing. I try something in ChatGPT. I try with Baidu. Try all the different things, like what Cole just asked me to copy and paste into ChatGPT, right? You can put into some of the other engines that is maybe specialized for Chinese and so forth, and see what are the outcomes. I believe we are at the threshold of a massive pivot, a massive change. So this is an opportunity for us to do a number of things. So these are some of the things, the immediate things that I think many of us can do: writing reports, doing math. All right, it occurred to me that why can't it do math? Why not? It's just numbers anyway, right? Tell it to come up with a set of instructions step by step for our hands-on lab. Pictures, right? Obviously, pictures ChatGPT cannot do, but thanks to Linus, he shared with me another AI engine that can do pictures. I haven't had a chance to play with that yet, but I found ChatGPT to be awesome in finding websites. Okay, some of you probably know that SQL Server 2022 just came out, so I got it to find me all the relevant websites for SQL Server 2022, because the last time I tried to do that for SQL Server 2019 took me hours. Okay, and this saves hours for me. And of course, doing research, right? Going beyond just searching for basic information, but going deeper into research. So I think these are amazing things you can do, right, with this technology, right? Any feedback? Anyone has an angle that potentially could be bad, if you want, or something?
Can I ask a question?
Sure, of course you may.
So there's a lot of misinformation online, and so this chat box draws everything from online, if I'm not mistaken, is it? So how, and it's so good at putting things into, seems like, sounds true, sounds legit. So how can we even distinguish what is true anymore?
Well, actually, you brought up a very good point. A lot of the responses that come back looks very legit, like, and that's also true when you go through a search engine like Google, right? So when you do a Google search, do you assume that what you get is legit, is accurate? You need to do, I believe, validation, verification, okay? Like anything else. If let's say I were to use this to pull out some Bible verses as part of my quiet time, obviously, I will probably have to go back to my Bible, whether it's an electronic Bible or physical Bible, to validate that, right? So it's no different. That's why I think if we were to let loose a tool like this to the younger audiences, the less matured, or even people who have no context, no exposure, no experience with that particular field or discipline, they need to be grounded to a certain extent with the basics. right, before they are let loose, and not framing them with the right discipline to be able to validate the information and make sure that they don't just lock on barrel, copy and paste the information. Right now, there are ways to check, by the way, because I do realize that sometimes there's no way to be able to validate every single line of text, right? So how do I know whether this is AI, right? Or could it possibly be written by people, all right? So let's just copy 5 bullet points of this text, right? So what I've done is I've gone and searched for some AI detection engines. I found 3 so far. Okay, one is called CrossPlat, all right? And in here, I'm just going to paste the text that I copied, okay? Now, don't take the outcome as Bible truth, okay? That's the important thing. Even such engines could be mistaken, all right? It could make a mistake if you want, but in this case, it is pretty accurate. It thinks it's 97% AI, okay, for this engine. Okay, let's go to another AI detection engine, okay? This one is called Writer. Okay, let's have a look at what Writer has to say. For the same text, okay? Let's analyze that. Wow, what does this one say? 99% human generated. So if we were to depend on one system, and if that system makes a mistake like this one, then obviously we are already wrong. Okay, let's look at the third one. Okay, I've got 3. Okay, let's see. This is human text. 2 out of 3 of the AI detection engine failed to detect that this is an AI derived response. Okay, so now systems being systems, they are made by people and people are not perfect. So even the AI detection engines, in this case, 2 out of 3 have failed us. So what can we say about that? Now, just to give you a context, I wrote something, right? Just out of trying to provoke the AI engine, I wrote something and it came back that almost 90% it says it's AI. So my own writing comes out as AI. So what does that mean? Am I AI? Or maybe I write so AI-like that I trick the AI detection engine to think I'm AI. Okay, so now that's your guess as good as mine. Okay. I'm not trying to belittle the system, but this is still early days in terms of how good the engine is. Like what JN says, it's good enough for certain scenarios that is very useful for us in our workplace. But is it good enough and reliable enough like Google today? But even Google searches a lot of times are not necessarily Bible truth if you want from that perspective. So we have to be careful. Okay. Now, SQL Server 2022 is one of our technology, and it has just only been released. It's like this week or last week. So I started to ask very simple questions just to push it a little bit. If you want to test the waters. So what is SQL Server 2022? You and I don't need to know exactly technically what it is, but it's a database engine if you want. So it tells me this, and I'm sure this probably got harvested from some repository that they collected from the Microsoft learning engines and the database and so forth, right? So which is not bad. But what I like about this is I can keep asking it to tell me more. Tell me more. Keep going. Now try doing this with Google. It won't work. If we say keep going, probably give you a definition of what keep going means. But the contextualization of the questions and the responses is awesome. Okay, I've not seen any search engine, and even understand something like don't stop now. Now, if you are not an English-speaking person for most parts, maybe don't stop now don't mean a whole lot if it's not in the context of asking about a technology like SQL Server 2022. Now, what is interesting for my work is I want it to compare, right? How do I compare SQL Server 2022 with its predecessor, which is 2019. Now, this is powerful for me. Okay, now it takes me hours in the past, right? If I want to do a comparison, and I have to wait for Microsoft typically to come up with a comparison table, right? This is not a replacement by a long shot to that comparison table, but this is a very good start for me to start to use it for my own training and so forth. Okay. Now, is this accurate enough? Obviously, I have to do my testing, go back and validate and compare with some of the other data sheets and white papers that I have. But this is very good. As I mentioned, I often need to get good websites to support the information that I'm sharing, right? To get all of this, apart from the first one, takes time, takes a lot of time. But then how does it know that I'm interested in performance? How does it know I'm interested in the user group? How does it know that Stack Overflow, SQL Shack, and all these are really credible SQL Server community websites? And for your information, I know that for a fact because I've been following those for a long time. But it's interesting that it is able to pull that kind of information out. All right, so this is how I believe we can really leverage a tool even at these early stages. Okay, any feedback, any questions, any comments?
No, I think the application areas these days, ChatGPT is extensively used for that I know, is especially to debug certain code, which is very, very good. And its ability to interact, for example, if you want to play a game, its ability to go and interact with the users, I think that's something that's non-existent today with Google search engines, right? Google just gives you a list of websites that are available and not necessarily interactive. I think that's probably the edge ChatGPT has, apart from looking at as just a search engine.
Yeah. Okay, so another area of testing that I did with it was to play with numbers. Okay, I'm not particularly good with playing with numbers, and I realized ChatGPT is also not particularly good at playing with numbers because it took it a long time to respond. All right, like 2 + 2 with Google is instantaneous. With this one took a few seconds, right? Then I say 2 to the power 3 also took a few seconds. Square root of 16 took minutes, right? And those of you who haven't tried this, if you did this in Google, instantaneous, it gives me this, it gives me a calculator, I can do more. Now, the limitation of ChatGPT obviously is it cannot give you this calculator, right? So it can give you a number, but it took a long time. So obviously it's not optimized for doing math, okay, which is fine. I'm okay with that, all right? At least I know what is good for, what is not good for. At least I'll use it for the purpose. It's like not every tool is a hammer, right? You have a screwdriver, you have a spanner, and so forth, right? So know the tool for what it's capable of doing, right? So what I did do the next was I tried to use it to give me a set of instructions. So making kites was something that I did when I was very young child, but that was like 40 years or more ago. So that said, I can't remember a word. I can't remember a step on how to do it. So I decided to test it. So it came back with all of this. Okay, so not bad. Obviously, I don't know whether it works, but it looks pretty credible to me. Okay, now if I did the same thing in Google, let's say how to create a kite in Google, do you think Google will give me the same result? Okay, now I'm a very visual kind of person, so I love pictures, I love videos, right? But I don't like the fact that I have to scroll so long before I even get to see the instructions, right? Maybe this is Google knowing me, using it repeatedly every day, that I like pictures, I like videos, so it gave me those first, but it has overdone it. I wanted to know the steps, right? But the problem I have with Google is it presents so many links to me, I don't even know which one I should start with. Now, that's a flip side, good thing and a bad thing, but to me, it's a bad thing. I'd rather it give me one way, then if that way doesn't work, I go and look for more ways, rather than drowning me with so many different links and all these pictures. Is very distracting. It doesn't help me if I want to do research, if you want. Okay, so it depends on what I'm trying to achieve, all right? The right frame of thought and what are the things that I want to do with it, okay? Now, the other aspect that I found that's very important, and probably I will stop after this, is this part here. I come from the world of sciences. So in the world of sciences, we play with temperature, we play with chemicals, we play with different things, we dissect, frogs and all those other things, right? So I looked at it, why not try to test it in terms of what it tells me about temperature, right? 0 degrees C. The thing I like about this is it tells me that in the context of water, that's when water, liquid, becomes solid. It even tells me that this is known to be the freezing point of water. Now, something I highlighted to Cole when I was doing a dry run with him earlier is, if you look at the way it came back with a response, it says 0 degrees Celsius is when water changes its state from liquid to a solid, forming ice. If I were to write this sentence, I would say this temperature is known to be the freezing point of water, directly referencing the previous sentence, right? But it tells me it's a melting point of water, or ice, sorry, and the freezing point of water. So if I were to write this, I'll say this is the freezing point of water and the melting point of ice. Okay, I don't know whether you agree or disagree with me. This is how I would write it, all right? But if I were to do a search in the AI detector, what do you think I'll get? It's a very short sentence, so it may not be easy for the AI detector to detect this. Okay, now the shorter it is, the harder it is, and it's not a surprise. Because if you and I were to write a simple sentence like this, right, probably between an AI and a real person, there's going to be a very, very small difference. And this is telling of that, right? 43%. Now, if I were to switch the response to it slightly, okay, this temperature is known as the freezing point of water, and stop there. What do you think? Is it human or AI? You see that, right? It's more human now. It's went from 43 to 36. Okay. Also, sorry. Okay. Now, if you think of it from that perspective, what I just added didn't make any difference, right? But by switching the way the second sentence is, all right, somehow it detected that that's more human than the way the machine or the AI will write it. Okay, just to give you a perspective, because at the end of the day, if we are teaching our kids, our younger generation, how to move forward and so forth, we need to know how this technology is going to be a tool for us, right? And not an adversary. Okay, so I want us to think of it from that perspective and yet having fun with it. Okay, so I decided to push it a little bit further. So what else? I wasn't satisfied with a very short response. So it gave me some information, which was a regurgitation of the previous bit at the start. But the second bit was interesting because I come from the world of science, right? So it says in many scientific and technical fields, including thermodynamics, which is an area that I studied, and meteorology, which I know nothing about. Okay, so I says, tell me more. And guess what? It went on and told me about thermodynamics, and it told me about meteorology. And then it went further and says, in many industrial and technical applications, blah, 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 blah. And because I have quite a lot of interest in biology, I decided, tell me about biology from the context of that 0 degrees. Now, this is interesting. to me, this is a gem. Okay, it has lateral thinking capability like what a human being has. On one side, it's telling me 0 degrees is about water. Then it tells me about thermodynamics and meteorology. And then I can even push it further to tell me about biology. Okay, just life, I'm going to say, how about chemistry, my favorite subject? Interesting, eh? Wow.
Hi, Noel.
Yes,
Sorry
Lorraine.
to be coming up further. We have another 5 minutes to go.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, by the way, thermodynamics is part of chemistry. Okay, but I hate thermodynamics. It's really, really hard. It's mind-boggling hard. Now it's thinking, okay? And if the systems are too busy, it will give you an error. Okay? So, Jane, your problem may have been the systems were overwhelmed by silly people like us asking these kind of questions.
I'm glad.
Because I've been really barraging it with all kinds of things. Like I decided because I have a network error. Okay. This is what I mean, right? Network error is actually not probably from my side. I'm connected through a cable all the way to my wireless router switch, right? So it's not a networking problem, but I know this for a fact because I've had this situation the last few days too. So what I did do, oh yeah, picture request. Remember someone was asking me, was it you, Jayan, asking about picture? So I did try. Show me a picture. It says, I'm sorry, as a text-based AI model, I don't have the capability to display images. Now, what stood out for me in this sentence, it has the ability to mimic almost human-like politeness. All right, I'm sorry. Do you think Google will give me, I'm sorry? Google will probably be just like another computer. It says, sorry, or no, right? You're not going to get it. That's it, right? But I like the fact that the author or the people who wrote this software has a very good balanced view of how to respond like a human, even though this is AI at best, okay? It says Google Images, right? So I even tested it with the movies as I was sharing with you. But the last bit I wanted to end with is I wanted to test it on health. So I asked it, I'm telling it I'm sick. Okay, it comes back and says, I'm sorry to hear that you are unwell. Oh God, I'm sorry to hear that, right? Doesn't that sound very human? I'm sorry that you're unwell, okay? It's always best to consult with a doctor or medical professional. Then I said, help. Of course, how can I help you today? All right, just like, for example, you're not feeling good. So it says, help. Okay, then the person reaches out to you. Of course, how can I help you today? Then you say, I'm sick. All right, you notice I'm repeating myself, right? I was actually trying to trick it to see how it will respond every time I just regurgitated the same sentence. I see whether I can push it to come up with new responses and so forth. Then it says something along a slightly different line, but has similarities to the previous response. It says here, staying hydrated. The earlier one says drinking plenty of fluid. Don't we do that as humans? Sometimes we don't like to repeat ourselves, right? So we use a different way to describe the same thing, right? Now, this is human, very human. It says getting plenty of rest. It said the same thing here. Using over-the-counter medication to help relieve symptoms. Then it says the same thing over here. Over-the-counter medication to relieve symptoms. But then it added fever, headache, and muscle pain, which I never told anything about. It came to a conclusion where I'm going to insert some of these additional ailments into this response. Then it says I have fever. Okay. Now you think about it, right? Every time you try these things, it comes up with amazing. Then I decided to test it, how much it knows about temperature for fever. This is interesting. 38 degrees body temperature is considered a low-grade fever. Isn't that true? Isn't that so true? Okay. All right, so I'm going to end here. My hour is up. For remaining time, I'm open to questions. I don't know everything about ChatGPT. I'm not an expert in this area. It's just that I love playing, and I find every time I try, I'm amazed. And I just want to share whatever I know so that hopefully through this, you're guided. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so how do I get started? I shared that with you already. It's a website. Okay. So any questions? My hour is up. Yeah. Hugo, for the feedback form.
Yeah, I just want to add in, I think looking at ChatGPT, I think the browsers will probably move to the next level, which is conversational browsers.
And how would that be different from what we have today?
Because then, it tracks your searching as a conversation.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Similar to what we were doing, but it's an integration between what a browser does.
Yep.
So having a conversation with the browser. So I think that would be the next level of where browsers would probably develop to.
Conversational browsers. Let's take this area to the next level. Let's see what we can do with it. Right. After a week or so of playing, or maybe even less than that, truly I find it amazing. All right. Yes, I can see elements of threats or elements of risks and concerns, but I don't think there's a problem with leveraging a tool, just like any tool, right? There are dangers to using the tool or abusing the tool. All right. And of course, I also have another feedback form in this QR code, but the one that Ko has shared definitely will be very good. So give us feedback. Tell us what you think, right? And there will be more sessions because I can see so much potential in this tool, right? I'd love to hear from any of you. If you have questions and so forth, you can post them into the chat in this particular team session. Or if you need to reach out to me, all right, my details is at the start of the slide deck. Sorry. Let me just bring that up. See here.
Right. I find that very interesting. I'm sorry, I have to go now. I look forward to the next topic.
Thank you,
Yeah, I
Karen.
think it's all very exciting, but there is a lot of concerns still. So I'll put it in I'll send it to you. Okay.
Thanks. Thanks,
Thanks.
Sharon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. Okay, so write to me. All right. If you have any feedback and so forth. All right. Definitely, we will be pushing ahead and doing more and harnessing the capabilities. I always believe that there's opportunity in such situations. All right. And if there's any of you want to come back to me or circle back to me with questions and so forth, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Noel. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks.
Take
Okay,
care.
bye.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
I think you can stop the recording now.